Welcome to another video, CoLiving Canada, and my partner Christopher is with us, and we're going to be talking, really focusing on quality of life issues, particularly in senior years and so on, but really reviewing quality of life and what is some of the things that we need to be thinking about in this subject area. So maybe Chris, if you'd like to take things on this.
For sure. So in the early days, when Duncan and Mark and I were talking about the idea of co-housing and, what could we do together, or do we want to, try to build a project or provide services, support folks, a book was shared with us. And that book's name is Being Mortal. And it really, I think it impacted me. I think it impacted all of us as we read it. And I'm just going to put it up here. Now, the gentleman is a doctor, and his father was a doctor. And the father got very ill all of a sudden. And suddenly his son, who, as I mentioned, was also a doctor, was forced to go through the healthcare system and the medical system and realize how faceless and daunting and frustrating it was, and how many difficult and uncomfortable situations both he as the child was being put in, but also the parent was being put in, who was going through the aging process. And this issue of losing control, that you've had somebody who has been in control of their future, made powerful and important decisions, and is very much focused not on security or safety, but has been focused on having a great quality of life. Where at the same time, the caregivers that you meet along the way are very much focused on security, safety, extension of life, even if it's for a short period, but not really focused on the idea or the issue of quality of life. So a number of concerns were raised in the book, including the issue of uncertainty, like what's going to happen to me? How am I going to live? Am I going to be able to afford to live in a situation where I'm happy? Am I going to be near the people that I care about? Are they going to be able to come and support me, or provide the resources to make things happen? Helplessness and just the sense of being out of control. And this ties into denial, which again is part of the Aging Successfully training that we do, which is getting people to really face the facts, which are scary, but if faced, can be planned for and addressed. But if you keep putting off some of the tough decisions, then you may find yourself after a fall with a broken hip, not being able to drive, isolated and totally in a situation where you have no choices, or at least don't know that you have any choices. Health, safety, security, finances, issues of loneliness. Duncan has mentioned this before, as has Mark, and then boredom, like sitting alone, watching TV and being really generally not engaged with the world or doing things that are you're passionate about. And there's one lady, she was a music teacher, that's mentioned in the book that really hit me. And I can remember just feeling the sadness well up and getting teared up whenever I was reading about her. So she was faced with this scenario where she had to decide between doing chemotherapy or doing some alternative treatment. And the chemotherapy was going to extend her life, or at least that was the value proposition that was being put forward. But it would mean that she would not be able to do the things that are most important to her, which were teaching children music. And the other scenario was you might not live quite as long, but you'll be able to continue to teach kids music. Maybe not 3 or 4 classes or whatever it was per day. Maybe it will be a much reduced situation, but you'll still be able to do the things that you care about and that you're passionate about. And by being faced with the decision of how do I manage my quality of life, while also at the same time addressing healthcare and my living situation, all that sort of stuff, but in a way where how do I feel, what am I afraid of, and what are my hopes are core questions, rather than are you going to take this regimen of medicine or whatever it is to extend your life. Extending life without a quality of life is not a great scenario. Extending life while having a great quality of life is a great scenario. Having a great quality of life while recognizing that we're all going to pass away someday may be the better scenario than the first. Maybe not as good as the second, but at least recognizes what's really important in somebody's life.
Yeah. There's just a couple things come up there as you were talking, Christopher. You mentioned about the chemotherapy. And I don't want to go off on this too far, but the Guardian newspaper in England, which is well respected, they did a survey among doctors who were cancer doctor specialists, oncologists, and they said, would take the treatment that you recommend, which is primarily the chemo treatment? And to my knowledge, 100% of them said they would decline it.
Wow.
which is boggling on the one side, but on the other, they're the ones that see what happens to the quality of life. And so they're saying, no, we'll opt for the quality of life. You know, if it means less time, but for better quality, we'll take that. The other thing that came to mind as you talked about this is when we lived in Victoria for a number of years, and I used to do a lot of entertainment. I do a lot of singing and that sort of thing, and we did this in a number of we'll call it seniors' homes, and these were mostly, a lot of them were private and were pretty high end. And so I think last year there we did, I don't know, 15 Christmas concerts or something at different institutions. But we tried. We said, look at, the people here have tremendous experience, tremendous resources, so much that they can offer the community. There's all kinds of needs in the community. And we ran into a brick wall with the administration. It's because there's, we have a certain program, we have certain staff, and everything has to fit within that. And what you're talking about is going to take more time. It's going to take more energy, or it's an unknown factor.
Right.
And, which addresses what you're talking about. And then if you look at where the money's going, the pension funds, the major pension funds in our country are fully supportive of these large institutions, which most of us, if we had our druthers, wouldn't live in.
Right.
And it's a matter of education. If people who are in those companies and public institutions that are supporting these, if there's education to that fact, I think there would be a different policy by the investment committees of these funds in terms of, we should be investing in things that are really quality of life focused, and so that's part of what our mandate is, part of our what we're about as well, to help bring that awareness. Yeah.
And so there's the caregiving, the health aspects, what's really important, and that idea of what's important to me, what are my hopes, what are my fears, and then addressing those and making sure that you're on the track to fulfilling your hopes in a maybe in a limited way. So like when I'm 80 or 90, I might not be doing the kung fu that I'm interested in, but I will be doing kung fu, I guarantee, in some way, shape, or form, right? And others, whether it's skiing or going for walks or gardening or I don't know, whatever those activities are or those things are that are fulfilling. How do you make sure that you can do those things? And then what are your fears and how do you head those off? How do you address them? And a big part of what we're trying to do at CoLiving Canada is to say, by recreating the village, and I'm just trying to get this next slide to come up. Oops. By recreating the village, by creating an intentionally designed space that the people that are going to live there shape or retrofit, and by creating proximity to the things that are important to you and the people that are important to you. You know, that the readings that I've done say it's about 5 to 10 minutes. You want to be within 5 to 10 minutes of the things that are most important, or they are not going to happen. Or if they do happen, it's going to create extra stress and strain on you. And as you get older, that circle becomes smaller, right? It becomes more challenging and more difficult to get outside of it. So if you can walk to it within 5 to 10 minutes, fantastic. If you can't, if you have to drive, there's a constraint. If you've got to, travel a longer distance, a constraint. So recreating the village with people who also want to live in a better environment, I think is really important. And again, I can't recommend this book, Being Mortal, to folks enough, because it will open up your eyes and really give you some food for thought, but also hopefully set you on the track to think about what's important to you, what are your hopes, what are your fears, and perhaps it will lead you back to us so that you can become part of one of the communities that we're trying to help create here in Canada, whether it's in Ontario or BC or someplace else.
Yeah, and I think this whole denial thing, a lot of it is that most of us haven't seen good news scenarios. We haven't, what we've seen is a lot of what's out there that we say, well, if that's the way it's going to be, it's the way it's going to be, but I really don't want to think about it.
Yeah.
Thinking that there aren't alternatives, and there are alternatives, there are choices, and that's part of what, and we'll be doing more videos on this too, in terms of what are the good news stories. What are the good news scenarios? And I think you'll be doing some traveling, Chris, maybe and across the pond and other places, and helping to bring those to us. And we'll be doing that more locally here, because there's some really good examples of this here in British Columbia. But I guess hope, that's what we really want to do, is we want to bring hope that's reality based. It's just not something in the sky, but there is hope for really for the golden years to be the golden years.
That's right. There's a proven process, and there's concrete examples of people living in a scenario other than an institution or home alone.
Yeah,
and we can help people make that happen.
Good.
Great.
Okay. Thanks
Duncan.
Thank you, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Sounds great. Take care.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye.